Hello, Being at Work listeners. Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Andrea Butcher, and goodness, I'm looking forward to this conversation today because so many leaders are feeling overwhelmed. I know I am. Working longer hours, juggling more responsibilities, and still feeling like they can't catch up. The problem is not time, it's energy. My guest today, Jessica DeLorenzo, is the Chief Human Resources Officer at Kimball Electronics, and she believes energy, not time, is the leader's most valuable asset. Time is fixed, after all, but energy is renewable. And when we manage it intentionally, we not only avoid burnout, we become more effective and present. Jessica has even partnered with AI to build a tool that helps her monitor and manage her own energy throughout the day. She challenges the hustle culture mindset and encourages leaders to take ownership of their energy, because saying I don't have time often means I'm not managing my energy. So listen in as we explore why managing energy is more powerful than managing your time, how to read and influence the energy of the people around you, and why self-compassion is a critical part of sustainable performance. So Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andrea. I don't know if we talked about this, but it feels like I'm coming home. I grew up in radio, so being in front of a mic just feels natural, especially for a topic that I think is so important, so relevant today.
Well, I'm so glad. Yes, and you do have a wonderful radio voice.
Thank you. I'll credit my dad to all the training starting very early.
Absolutely. You were born for a moment like this.
I think so.
But it is such a timely topic. I know I'm feeling it. I know a lot of leaders are overwhelmed, burnout. So that is the problem that we are hoping to solve today. Leaders are working harder, but feeling less perspective. So tell us, what is your perspective? You say it's not a time problem, it's an energy problem. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I think about what we do with our phones. How often, when was the last time you charged your phone or plugged in your phone? And how often do we do that for ourselves? I mean, time is a fixed asset. Everyone has 24 hours. So to me, it's not about the amount of time, it's about the quality of that time. And what I mean by the quality of that time is, what version of ourself do we show up in the time that's given to us? So the quality of that time is really in the energy and in the finite amount of time that we have. It's the cognitive, the emotional, the intellectual capacity, I would say, that leaders show up with. And when leaders are overwhelmed, they just don't have the capacity to be the best version of themselves. And when our phone is out of energy, it doesn't work. So we as humans, we just don't work when we don't have the capacity to do that. And I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, and there's a famous line in the Fellowship of the Ring that Gandalf says, and all we have to do is decide what to do with the time that is given to us. And I just think that's so powerful and really sort of breaks down the problem that we're trying to solve, or the conversation we're going to have about it.
Yeah, that's really good. So it really is a mindset shift, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
And think about how prevalent that language is. I don't have time. Think about how you hear that every single day.
It's so easy to say.
It's easy to blame it on.
Exactly. Yeah. I just think it's become an excuse, and people accept it as an excuse now. And we'll get to this later, but I just have no tolerance for that anymore. So yeah, it's really about energy management.
Well, tell me now, if a leader says to you, Jessica, I don't have time for that. How does your no tolerance show up?
Well, first of all, I have to check myself, my body language, right? Don't roll your eyes, don't get that face, right? But it on one hand, it makes me really sad for that person that they haven't sort of been given the chance, maybe is a better way too, is they just haven't had the chance to pause and have the self-awareness about, what really are you saying by I don't have time? I think you're really saying, I haven't made I haven't had the choice. I have chosen not to
Hmm.
make the right priorities and be clear about my non-negotiables and how I show up. So I just get really sad on one hand. On the other hand, I just get really frustrated about like, well, what are the conditions that have created that for that person? Is it self-imposed? Is it externally imposed? And so I do sort of struggle with those two emotions, but it's something I don't have much tolerance for.
It's a good point you make about the what's within my control and what's not in my control. Because I do think our organizational structures, you're in a corporate environment. I've worked in a corporate environment a lot. I work with corporate clients every day. And I do know like pressure is real. Demands are high. Like the urgency is like days are filled with meetings.
Yeah. And, and I came across this question the other day, and it's really had me asking myself, like, this idea of urgency is this urgent or is this loud? So and that helps me sort of think about what's my priority in this moment. What am I going to choose in this moment? Because we talked a little bit about hustle culture, and to me, it's this idea that constant activity is somebody's version of success. And when I think about hustle, I'm not talking about like my son's soccer coach telling him to hustle down the sideline because he's picking daisies and twirling circles, right? That's not that's a different, I think, sort of hustle. But this idea of constant movement, it's just not productive, I think, to individuals managing their energy. And I get so frustrated because I think sometimes the ownership of energy is people make it more complicated than it
Hmm.
actually can be, right? It's an overcomplication or maybe dismissal of what's really the most important thing.
Hmm.
And in leadership, showing up as the best versions of ourselves for others, being at work, being for others, right? Is that idea that is the most important thing, is to show up for others, to create a space where they can be the best versions of themselves. And I think that's the outcome of choosing energy management over time
Hmm.
management. And it's not about output. How many hours did I put in? How many widgets did I make? It's about the outcome. What progress, what impact did I make today? And that's a really powerful, I think, definition of success.
Different measurement scale, isn't it?
I think so.
Okay, so it starts with the mindset shift.
Mhm.
So how do I get leaders to understand that mindset shift?
I think a lot of coaching starts with self reflection, right? So taking that time and really understanding who you are. But I think a lot of leaders today also, it's this idea they're being pressured to be more strategic thinkers. That's one of the most common
Mhm.
sort of feedback things that I get about leadership. So we just came out of a meeting about succession planning, and well, this person needs strategic acumen. What does that mean? I you know, energy management, if leaders can think about energy management as a strategic asset, their energy is their strategic asset, breaking down this just idea of strategy. The essence of strategy is choosing to do activities differently than your rivals, choosing different activities, choosing to perform those activities differently, and that creates a unique and valuable position. Or if you think about your leaders, after the self-awareness is a unique and valuable version of themselves involving a different set of activities. So, after individuals know what activities they do, they can use that self-awareness, that second step around self-awareness of, well, what does this activity do for me, to
Mm.
me? And
Mhm.
is it deplete my energy or does it fuel my energy? And I think that self-awareness and that clarity around what those activities do can really help individuals identify what needs to change. What do they
Right.
need to do differently to use energy as a strategic asset? And this is candidly, Andrea, I went to one of your workshops here in the area, and that particular workshop. You did an energy audit
Yeah.
exercise, and after that, I went home. I took those questions. I had a conversation with some of my AI tools about, these are the energy audit questions.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm struggling with. here's where I want to be, and just had a conversation like, help me,
Yeah.
ChatGPT, like help me. What can I do about this? And that's sort of what led me to this tool or this framework that I use to do my activities differently, to manage my energy as a strategic asset. And I think that's helpful for other leaders too, and how you get them to change is maybe sometimes they just need the manual. There's not a manual for a lot of things, but if you can give them a little tool, that can make it a little bit easier.
But it does start with an awareness of when my energy is high, when it is depleted,
Yeah,
and making choices to support that. I mean, that's what you mean by energy management. It's
for sure, for sure.
It's so personal, isn't it?
It is. It is. And that's why I think a tool like I use it, you can, it's not, this is what's right for Jessica. It's sort of a framework to say, ask myself these questions and then fit in my activities of the day. It's really, you're exactly right. Every person has so many different experiences, value systems, expectations, what good looks like to them.
Right.
Just if they have the self-awareness, giving them something to hang some of those things on sometimes can be
Yeah.
the lower the barrier to entry to change for them.
And what we need.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with my operations lead yesterday, and she had taken something off of my plate, and she was talking about
Amazing.
how much energy it gave her was the language that she used. And I'm thinking, like,
amazing.
Holy shit, this is the thing that most drains my energy.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how when you start to be really honest with yourself, you're like, no, this, like society says this should fuel me, but
it doesn't.
I'm exhausted after doing X, Y, Z. So yeah, and then the next person's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And it's life changing for them. And that's really powerful. And I think that's really sort of the ripple effects of
Right.
the clarity you can get by managing your energy instead of your time.
I suspect that's why you are so anti-hustle culture, because those are some of the things like, I should be doing this.
Yeah.
I should be posting on LinkedIn every single day. I should be making 5 sales calls. I should be. I mean, it's, gosh, all the things. That's the hustle culture that.
Absolutely.
And if you go into an activity with that kind of attitude, like, it is not going to serve you well.
It's not. And to your point, it's not going to serve others well either, because what are you robbing them of that adds value to their life? And, I that's how I approach my email responses is a dirty little secret I have that now is not a dirty little secret anymore. I'm about to say it is I use the delay send on email so often. It's like a secret weapon in terms of dispelling hustle culture. And this somebody's idea of responsiveness is you send it to me, I'm back to you within 2 minutes sort of response. So in what I'm really trying to do there is be thoughtful about creating an expectation for my team that they always have to be on, that they always have to feel like they are in this high energy mode of their day, when really it's just not sustainable. So yeah, what's right for me is not right for you, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really good point on the delay send. We teach people how to treat us.
Oh, I love that. That's one of my favorite sayings. I'm so glad you said it. I love it. So good.
I was so frustrated recently with a client whose expectations were so high. And as I stepped back to reflect on that, it's like, oh my gosh, I've trained them to have
yeah.
really high expectations because I've always just done all the thing without putting boundaries in place. So I've created this monster. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's really powerful self-awareness to be able to pinpoint. And it's humbling when you pinpoint those situations where you're like, oh my goodness, I did that to myself. So, but then you have that moment to say, well, I'm going to change it, or am I just going to move on to the next thing because, hustle and urgency and all of these other things, or am I going to deliberately choose to manage something differently? And, and maybe you need to call it out to that person. Hey, well, let me reset expectations, or I know I have set this, whatever with you, but yeah, wow, that can be humbling. That's happened to me a few times, and it's painful, but it's also progress.
It is progress. And right next to that reflection is self-compassion, because I also think we could be beat up on ourselves, and grace is always important as we're managing our energy. And I know you talk about that, like self-compassion as an energy management strategy.
Yeah, and this is something that I struggle with, day in and day out. I've always been a high achieving individual and have had a lot of what other people would call success in my life. But that comes with a level of anxiety and stress. And, this stress can be really helpful to a point. Like, it activates things in your brain, things in your body to help you perform to a point until it doesn't. Right. And so this self-compassion to me is difficult, but it's also essential. And I've had to learn this over and over again. Leaders who are too harsh on themselves, too critical of themselves, that's just a really energy draining state of being. And just that rumination, that worry, that fear of failure, imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it, just takes up a lot of capacity, emotional, cognitive, intellectual capacity. And, what we talked about earlier is, well, that doesn't leave room for anything else, right? You can't manage your energy when you're sort of constantly in that state. So I have a little pin, like a little lapel pin in my workspace, and it says, "Be kind to yourself." And it's just a visual reminder of, the nicer I can be to myself, the more grace I can give myself. It literally frees up my brain for more executive functioning, better decision making, better showing up as the best version of myself, better critical thinking, problem solving, all of those things. So, self-compassion is a leadership strategy. The more self-compassionate we are, the more compassionate we're going to be to others. And, that emotional intelligence and being able to create an environment, be a leader who shows up and creates an environment where people can be the best versions of themselves, where they feel like they can fail hard, they can fail fast, and they can learn and move on, right? They can take risks, they can innovate. And when we talk about leadership strategy and organizational strategy, that's a driver of high performance, right? You have engaged, innovative people who are really energetic. They're managing their capacity in a really thoughtful way. You're going to get really high performance. It doesn't necessarily matter the hours in the day. It's what comes out of those hours. So
how does this language around energy management, self-compassion as a leadership strategy, how does this language show up in your role as a chief HR officer in a corporate environment for a large organization?
Yeah, I think I have this reputation a lot of times, especially with our HR teams, of a couple of questions that I always like to ask. What are you most proud of? And what I'm really asking is, how are you renewing your energy? How, forcing moments for the people to pause and reflect. Well, I'm really proud of this. Well, that reduces some of that anxiety, that what if, that worry, and replaces it with positive things that can free up executive functioning. So, that, and I like to ask, well, how are you going to celebrate that? How are you going to pause and plug in the phone of your body and recharge with the really wonderful things that you've accomplished? To just pause. My team almost makes fun of me because I use the word pause a lot. And, we get through the quarter end or year end, and I'm always asking and encouraging, how are you going to pause? How are you going to, please, I'm begging you to take time to rest and reflect. And I think what I'm trying to do is give permission to do that, to give permission, not to have to feel like everything's urgent or everything is loud, right?
Yes.
And I try to be that role model of pause and reflection, and everything is not a priority, but the things that are non-negotiable in some ways. And how you manage your cognitive and intellectual and emotional capacity to do that is really being the best version of yourself.
Yeah. And don't you think some of it is experimenting with it and seeing,
oh my gosh, yes.
And seeing what feels good to you? You've used the word rest multiple times. How do you define rest. I mean, I think of rest of like, I've got to be laying down, like in my bed, on my couch. And I immediately have this, I don't have time for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So one of the ways that I define rest, I guess for myself, a definition of rest is quiet and stillness. To me, is I don't have to your point, I don't have to be laying down, but I know myself well enough that I need certain blocks in my day where I just need to settle. I just need to sit and I need some restoration. And one of the ways practically that I do this is I use that sort of framework that we talked about earlier, the energy audit and AI tool. And I know one of my low energy zones of my day. I think you use those terms, that language, zone of your day, right? In your energy audit. I think that's brilliant. In one of the low energy zones of my day is pretty much from the time I wake up to about 10 a.m. So it takes me a little while to ramp up, but I know that that's a low energy zone. So I try to do activities that fuel me in that low energy zone as a way to rest. So like a non-negotiable for me is to like grab a cup of coffee and just sit in the quiet of the house before the kids, holy moly, before they get up, right? Because I just need that time to ground myself in the stillness and think about what are the priorities for my day. What do I need to accomplish in my high energy zones of the day, and what needs the best version of myself today, and what just needs a version of myself, because I think showing up as the best version all the time is just, it's not sustainable. But to me, that's rest. Is most of the time it's by myself, quiet. There's usually something hot in my hands that I'm drinking, tea or coffee or whatever, but that to me is restful.
I love that. So much of it is reframing how we think about all of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in our hustle culture, I think we've put so much pressure on ourselves to like do, engage, be in the arena, be in the arena, be in the arena. And sometimes like, no, the best thing for me to do right now. And I suspect you would say the same thing. I remember early in my career hearing like, sometimes you've got to go slower to go faster. And it annoyed the shit out of me. Like, because I like getting shit done. I like doing, I was rewarded for that. Like, she's such a hard worker. She takes work home.
Yeah.
And now it's like at this point in my career, I recognize the more grace, the more rest, the more fulfilled, the more success, the more impact. I'm grateful that I'm recognizing that. Still working on it, but I see the impact. You too.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I took this role all those years ago, my predecessor had written on the whiteboard, which was now going to be my office, that phrase. And I remember walking in and being like, ah, damn it. Like she's right. But at the same time, it was frustrating because I had so much I wanted to get done.
Yeah.
So much I wanted to get done. And I also felt like there was so much expectation on me too, to prove myself. And I think to your point, when you sort of slow down and you're aware and you recognize and you celebrate what makes you unique and what is your own value proposition, that's worth a ton, right?
Yeah.
And that really can help you slow down, but I also think it can help you simplify, right? I think a key leadership skill today is finding the simple in the complex. And when there is so much going on, people are often looking to leaders to say, help stop this spin, help, right? We're overwhelmed. So I think a leader that can really break things down into something that can ground the group or ground themselves, it really starts to put much more into focus what's the most important outcome, not just the output. So I think that's really, really important.
Because there's so much. You can get lost in it. And it sounds like that's what you did with this AI tool.
Yeah.
Is really distilled for you, like from an energy management perspective.
Yeah. So as I think about the tool and the different activities that go in the tool, so here what the output is. Don't love that, but what the output was of the tool was sort of two axes. The vertical axis or the y-axis is a question of does it drain me or does it fuel me? And then the x-axis or the horizontal axis is the time zone of my day. So those things that are, like I talked about, the sort of the squares, the things that necessarily that drain my energy, that occur in my low energy zones, those are just the things that exhaust me. And I'm pretty clear on what those things are. But I instead then use those low energy zones, like I talked about in my cup of coffee, to do things that recharge my energy. So charging up my battery before the rest of my day that needs a different or a better version of myself than me just sitting by myself drinking coffee, right? And then when I have, do those fueling activities in the high energy zone of my day, those are really energizing and empowering. And those are the times when I do high focus or high value work. That's when I'll really dig into the analytics around our talent metrics, or really start to put together finding the simple and the complex to draft an executive summary for the board of directors. Like those sorts of things are those high value activities. But then I think where leaders get really caught up is based on whatever inputs or expectations or whatever, those draining activities in your high energy zone. That's just a recipe for burnout. It's overstimulation. It's too much. You're overwhelmed. And I've used this tool to shift around my day. So, like, for example, I have a regular activity that I do is one-on-ones with my direct reports and with the HR teams around the world. And, depending on the time, some of it is dependent on time zone, but those are fueling activities for me.
Yeah.
But I use them as restorative activities as I schedule them in the low energy zones of my day. So I like to do those one-on-ones, in the earlier in the morning to fuel me for whatever else high stakes things I need to do that day, or and whatever other times I need a little bit of a pick me up. I may just call up a colleague and say, "Can you give me some of your energy right now? I just need a little bit of fuel." And it's been helpful for clarifying and then understanding my non-negotiables. I'm also notorious for time blocking my calendar. I'm a little shamefully, I look busier than I am most days because I block my calendar usually during those high energy times, because that's when I know I usually need to focus on something. And if I don't block my calendar, I'm going to totally lose control. So I do sort of craft my day, and to your point earlier, teach others how to treat me by managing my calendar in that way. To manage my energy, managing my time to manage my energy in that way.
Well, and anyone listening can do the same thing. I mean, so just to reiterate the axes that, it's what I hear you saying you did is identifying, is this an activity that drains me or fuels me? And then reflecting on like what time of day you are at your highest energy and lowest energy. And then you can map activities against those. That is something so simple that anyone can do to manage their energy.
Yeah, I hope so.
So you've given us lots of things to think about. I mean, over and over, this self-awareness, the personal responsibility that each of us have to manage our energy. Mm-hmm. I also think, this language is becoming so much more prevalent and day to day. Maybe it's just the people I hang out with, but, I think we are getting better at managing energy, and not just ourselves, but, in the meetings that we're in and the circles that we're in, even virtually. I have a team member who's struggling with something right now, and she's very private. We were in a team meeting a couple of weeks ago, and my colleague just continued to talk, and I could see like, she's not okay. Right. So I just paused and I acknowledged like, hey, I know you have a lot going on. No pressure at all to share. I just wanted to see you. So to talk about like managing energy in the meetings we're in. I mean, it goes back to your, that this is a strategic asset within organizations. This is a leadership principle. How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it sure is, right? And think of how many times you've walked into a classroom or on a stage and you can just tell. Like you can just
Yes.
tell. Yeah. And I mean, you sense, oh, this is how it's going to go. But I think leaders also have the choice to say, am I going to let it go that way, or can I shift and shape it? So when leaders are sensing the energy in meetings, what they're doing is they're sensing the emotions, the connections, the attention, what's the tone, what's the voice, what's the body language. And you knew your team well enough to say she is not okay, to think about it. And sometimes just being noticed is can shift the energy,
Yes.
right? So I think that's really, really powerful. And again, it comes back to finding this, I think, this simplicity in the complex. Anytime you put a bunch of humans in a place, I mean, there is a whole variety of expectations and experiences and emotions and value systems, and the leader's ability to know their team well enough, know the room, know human behavior well enough to decide based on the emotional temperature of the room, how can
Yeah.
I be the thermostat, right? And to change it, to shift it. And
Yeah.
like you did, like sometimes it just takes a question. I I do a timeout a lot. Like so my team knows that a timeout, like something we just need to reground ourselves, ask a question. Sometimes just calling it out in a way that feels authentic to your leadership style can be really, really powerful. And asking the question, and another way that I find really helpful in sort of grounding and de-escalating sort of or escalating the emotional temperature in the room is reminding people of purpose, like really grounding in meaning. What are we solving for? Why are we here? Those sorts of things can really
Right.
align people around the same thing, and which
Yeah.
can be really simple, and that can be a really powerful way to sort of shift the energy in the room back to this is what's most important that we do, and how we do that.
It almost like brings us up and aligns us. Yeah. So true.
Yeah,
We kicked
yeah.
off an executive team engagement yesterday that is a bit contentious. There's some really unhappy folks in the team. And we
There's a lot of
started,
potential there, huh?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
great. That's
But it
great.
wasn't just like jumping right in,
Yeah.
we started with the like what's working well with the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so it
Mm-hmm.
immediately aligned everybody to the strengths and the good things. And you could
Yeah.
feel first of all, they got to all have a voice in that. And it was like, okay, there is some good things going here.
Yeah, one of the exercises we like to do is when we have a workshop is we just take 5 minutes and turn to your partner and tell them something that you appreciate about them. And that reminder of, oh, I am enough. And when I feel like I'm not is a really powerful thing just to lift the energy in the room.
You
And
got it.
it's pretty cool because people would be surprised, like, oh, I didn't know that person even knew me well enough to give me some meaningful
Yes.
feedback, positive feedback that just re-energized me and reminded me of my purpose. So that's pretty
Mm,
cool.
mm. Goodness, I love the work you're doing. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah, Jessica referenced that you were in a workshop that I did,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
you posted on LinkedIn like the tool that you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
shared with us today. And so immediately I reached out and like, I want to learn more about that. That says a lot about you though, that you go to workshops and then you're like, how can I apply this in my own life when it really resonates?
yeah. And in sharing that, I mean, if that can help someone else, then oh, please. I mean, that's the purpose of my life is to increase the quality of others and increase the value of others people's lives. So please take that and do something with it. I don't know. Yeah, it's out there.
Yeah. Well, I have so many takeaways. I think as I reflect on our conversation today, I'm reminded that time is fixed and energy is renewable. Energy is infinite. So
Mm.
that is the place for me as a leader to focus. So as you're listening to our conversation, a reflection question that I'll pose to our audience: how are you managing your energy today? And what is one thing that you can do to renew it? That is the key. And something that's within our control all of the time. So it's a really empowering conversation.
It is. Thanks. Yeah, that's a great question for your audience. I hope they give themselves the time, the few seconds or minutes to really reflect and answer that question for themselves.
Yeah, what a gift it is.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jessica, thank you. If our listeners want to connect with you, what is the best way to do that?
And the best way by far is through LinkedIn. So I think you can find me in the search pretty easily. So yeah, reach out, and I'd love to hear how you're managing your energy, because I can always learn more too. So yeah, feel free to connect.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Let's connect to go a bit deeper. How can I help you? Looking for an executive coach, a facilitator for a team or leader engagement, or a high energy, heartfelt speaker? Learn more and connect with me through our website at abundantempowerment.com. I look forward to co-creating something magical with you.